Right, what have we got today? Bush, it is a quick review, well, quick for this channel, so under 10 hours probably, of the Sofirn SC32. This was sent to me by Sofirn, but it was sent on the understanding that they do not get to see this before it's released. They do not edit it or tell me what to put in it. This will be an honest review of exactly what I think. So if it's rubbish, I'll tell you, and if it's, you know, absolutely fantastic, I'll sing hallelujahs, as I've said in a previous video. Okay, so moving on. This is the Sofirn SC32. Now, if you remember, ages ago I did the Sofirn SC31. This was the Pro model, obviously slightly different, but this is the next one up. So I've got big hopes because I quite enjoyed this one. I like this. I think they did a good, for the price, I think they did an extremely good job, and that's something that I associate with Sofirn. In many respects, Workhorse is similar like that, but primarily Sofirn. It is a budget light brand, but within that budget, it doesn't mean you've got to forego all the nice treats. It generally means you're going to get a really low price, even with the sell-in. You know, they'll add like $3 or $4 to get that. This is like $25 at the moment, but you're still getting all those features that you want. Okay, so let's get it out of the box. I put everything back exactly how I got it, but obviously I have carried this for more than 2 weeks now, every day, and I've made good use of it. So let's just make sure that's everything. So there's the manual, which I refuse to read. So there's the box empty. Bush, get rid of that. Here's the manual, which I can't be bothered to read. You can pause this and read it if you want, because I'm doing this in 4K. So let's just have a little look here. So pause that and have a look if you really want, but I can't be bothered because I'm a man. There you go. And then on the back is in, that looks like simplified Chinese. Yes. Okay, so there it is in Chinese if you prefer that. Okay, so Bush, get rid of that. Not interested. Right, take this out. I don't know what the point of that is. You don't need that. Here is the cable. I've tested it and put this thing sleeve back on. It does work. It is a Type A to Type C, because this happens to be a Type C rechargeable. So you don't need to take the cell out and put it in a standalone charger. You can charge it inside, which is a great added feature, and I'll show you the charging in a moment. So we'll leave that cell there just to show you. That came on the light. Can't be bothered to look at that. And here are the, well, they call them accessories, but they're the bare basics, really. So what you get in here is, if I can take them out, you get a standard sort of generic lanyard and 2 O-rings. So they go over the machined part. So you can't undo the tail, so you can't lock it out like that. But don't worry, there isn't a lock. So you would use the O-ring up here. There it is there. So if we zoom in there a little bit. There you go, you see that there? That is the O-ring. So that in comparison with others, it's okay. It's not mega fat, but it's fine. So we'll zoom back out there, and you get 2 of them. So basically it goes between the 2 machine parts and ensures waterproofing, because the claims on this one are that it is an IPX8. So in other words, waterproof. You can submerge this completely in water and you will be all right. They feel okay. Like I said, they're not the fattest, but they're absolutely fine for a small light like this. And you get 2, so keep them just in case you shred them. So Bush, put them to one side. Here's a generic lanyard. The only problem I had with this is, I don't use lanyards, but I understand the point of them. If you work at height, sometimes it's a regulation that you need to use lanyards, so you know, tools don't go through people's heads, you know, down at the bottom of a building, for example. But I don't use them. This one is poor. It doesn't have a cinch, so I'm not gonna mark any points off that because I don't even use them anyway. But if you are a lanyard person, you may want to use your own, because there's no cinch there, so you're going to have this huge gaping hole where it may be easy to fall off. In regards to strength, let's just try it. So I'll pull until that hurts. Ow, right, that's hurting now. There's the indent. So strength test, absolutely fine, but it's generic. I can't see any major problems with that. So Bush, the only, like I say, the problem I had with it is normally you would have an attachment point on the tail. There isn't here, which keeps this lovely aesthetic with the concentric rings on the E-switch there. But the question comes, okay, so where do you attach this? Well, what you need to do is you need to use this little thing. I find that a bit weird, having an attachment point right in the middle, so it hangs like sort of a, I don't know, like a mechanic's conker. I don't know. I guess that's just what they chose, and that's fine. The only problem with that is if someone tries to steal your light and you're using this for security, that clip's just going to come off, because this clip is removable. There's the clip. The clip's okay in itself, you know. I quite liked it. It's not that strong though. Look, that's quite easy to lift up. Unfortunately, it's not to a level where it's useless, because I used this on many trousers, jeans, outdoor clothing, things like that. It was fine. It was fine. I wish it was proper deep carry. So they've added this loop. So I wish they'd added the loop to go right at the top, so you would only have sort of that protruding or almost nothing, and then you could quickly pull that. So the clip's okay, but I would have liked to have seen slightly stronger, slightly longer, and especially slightly prouder here. But it's okay, it's absolutely fine. And it doesn't come off when I'm doing that. On some of them, they click about, but the fitting is actually pretty decent. So I've got no problems with that. Okay, so they are calling this a mini tactical flashlight. It is tactical-ish. Generally, for a tactical, I would think of something a bit more hard-wearing with a stainless steel bezel, and this would be slightly deeper, so you can't crack the lens, and it would have momentary mode, which this doesn't have. So I don't know how it's tactical, but that's what they're calling it. I guess it's tactical, so if you wear like a camouflage glove and run around in the night, you know, who knows? It's more tactical than actual tactical. But if you're in the forces anyway, you know, sometimes you don't get a choice on the equipment. You're handed it and told, right, that's it, get on with it, get on with it, soldier. Anyway, so tactical flashlight, you can get this in two flavors, so you can get it in at 4000K or 6500. So in regards those figures, they are Kelvin values, and the 5000 is what I have here, so that's closer towards neutrally. 4500, 5000, that's neutral. It's not like a warm, and it's certainly not cool white or up there with the cool whites. The cool white option would be the 6500 Kelvin, so very white light. I prefer the more neutrals. Sometimes they don't look quite as bright, but they can be slightly better on throw because you don't get back scatter, and if you're on wet surfaces and things like that, you can get less glare. Although I've heard the argument, and I kind of agree with it, cool whites tend to look brighter, but depending on the level, that is a percentage. It's not massively different. But then you do have sometimes physical differences where a different tint will produce a different output. That isn't the case here. The 5000 or the 6500 will give you the same output. And in that regards, the maximum they are claiming on this light with the SST40, which is kind of known as a thrower, for me anyway, it's the SST40 LED, and the maximum they are claiming is 2000 lumens. But we'll discuss that later on, because I never felt like I was getting that, especially when one of the things that led me to that was I was checking it against this next torch, which is 1600. And I was checking using that one, then that one, side by side. I felt like this had slightly more lumens than that, and I realised this is a whiter tint, which should look slightly brighter, and it's a different setup. It's not TIR, but it just looked brighter. So I don't think it's getting the full 2000, but I can't prove that. But I just want to point that out. Okay, so this happens to use I think it's called a Fresnel lens. Now, as I mentioned in the thoughts video, that's up here. You can go and watch that now if you want, if you're really, really bored and you want even more of me waffling. In that video, I mentioned this uses a Fresnel. A lot of these lights will use something like a TIR, so this happens to be, there's a multi-TIR setup. So a TIR stands for total internal refraction. It's a solid piece of plastic instead of having a physical reflector. And there's another sort of, the LEDs down the bottom there, and then you have this TIR. On a more traditional light, like one of these, you would have the sort of, this is the reflector around the bowl around it anyway, and then you have the LED in the middle, and you're trying to like focus the beam. Now on this one, it's using a Fresnel, which is you could argue it's a kind of a TIR, but what it's doing is, if you were to take this to bits, you would notice that the TIR is probably about that big. Now with a Fresnel, what you can do is you're getting a similar effect, and you're similarly able to beamform to a degree. And when I say beamform, I'm not talking about proper beams and lasers. What I'm talking about, position it and get the spread you want. But in order to do that, they use these concentric rings of differing thickness, and you're trying to focus it to a degree and spread it again. Now, because of the way the Fresnel works, there's a massive reduction in how much is actually needed, so you end up with quite thin. The reason I know that is because years ago, I mean, you could go into, not so much now because they're all automated or shut down, but in the UK anyway, you would have a lot of lighthouses, and instead of having a massive lens that would be impossible to polish and create, they would use these Fresnel lenses, so it massively reduces the amount of polishing and work and actual physical mass needed in these lenses. You would have to have huge things. and you could bring them right down and make them quite thin, and that's what they've done here. The concentric rings do cause a few little issues. I don't know if I can show you that. You've got these little rings. They're not like the rings of Saturn on some of them, but you see how, if I turn that up a little bit, there, see how you've got these little rings here? They're barely noticeable even on camera there, and then as you pull back you don't really see them, but I just wanted to point them out. So that's a small issue, but because of that, and because they're able to make this so small, this is very short light. So compare it to the SC31 Pro look, the older model, very short. I realise it's not a fair comparison in regards that has a bowl, this doesn't, but that's the one thing that's allowing that to get smaller, because they both use an 18650. So a massive reduction in size. There's the Brynite E18 look, shorter. Workos FC11, much shorter. Again, I realise that's because it's a different setup, but this lens allows it to do that. I guess it's kind of beaten by the FW38 just. That's a TIR, very, very short, but kind of specialised by the lumen top there. And the D1, which was a very short light, look, it's actually shorter than that. So really good. So good job on the size. Well done on that, Sofirn. So really well done. Okay, so it's using an 18650, and I shall show you that. So we'll take it out. It's a button top. You can get it with the cell or without. I happen to go for with because it was only like $2 or $3 more. It's an 18650, and the capacity is 3000 milliamp hours, basically like a Samsung 30Q, although the specs will be slightly different in regards the maximum draw-in amps. But I've had no problems with this. Lithium ion, charges fine in all my X-Star chargers, and it charges fine in here. It is a button top, so the question is, well, okay, if it's a button top, can I use a flat top? Yes, you can. And to prove that, look, I'll take a 30Q out of the FW3A, take that out, and we'll pop that in. Now it's able to do that quite easily because there's a spring at the bottom and a spring at the top. So positive terminal at the top, screw that on, and it works straight away, no problems, and it survives the shake test. So listen, I'm shaking that violently, nothing. I did do a lot of shake tests, and it stays in there, no problems whatsoever, and works. So you can use your own cells, not a problem. So if you want it even cheaper and you've got a load of cells, just get it without the cell, save yourself a bit of money. Okay, so the next thing I want to cover is the charging mechanism. So put that back in there and screw that on. So in regards to charging, it is Type-C. Thank goodness for that, because I was sick of all these lights using the old-fashioned micro USB. So we'll show you using their cable first, and then we'll discuss some extra aspects of that. So we'll just use this charger. Now, charging can depend, I think on their website they were saying it's 1 amp or about then, because it takes 2.5 hours to charge the cell. I was getting better than 1 amp. It's like 1.2, 1.4, dependent on what level the cell was at. So I'll show you that. So here's the flap. And the flap's pretty decent, and you can deploy it with one thumb. It's got this little proud bit there. You can see that little bit that comes up, so I can just one thumb it like that, no problems. It also has a tiny lip on it. So if we zoom in there, see the little lip? So because of that, it makes a nice sensible seal. Okay, we'll zoom back out of there. So that lip does help, and it gives a nice seal, and it's deep enough. So what you would normally do is you take Type-C, so it's omnidirectional, you can put it in that way or that way, it doesn't matter, you're going to get exactly the same result. So you plug it in, and you get the charging there. So red when it is charging, flashing like that, and then green when it's full. And so there you go. So I don't know where they get this 1 amp from. I was getting 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, so it's up to 1.7 there, no problem. It's about 5 volts, and so quite rapid charging, although that will drop. It doesn't charge it at 1.7 for the entirety. That will drop, just bear that in mind. But very rapid charging. I had no problems with charging. I charged it from a computer, I charged it from this, all of those things. I did have one issue though, and I'll show you that now. So if you want to use Type-C to Type-C, which does work, okay, which is great. So you think, great, okay, here's a Type-C to Type-C, right, so let's get that plugged in. I can't wait to charge this. This is going to be just right up my street, right, let's get this plugged in. Oh, hang on, what's going on here? It doesn't fit. So a lot of these high power, high amp cables are quite, the more expensive they are, the more they overbuild them. Now, because this is quite overbuilt and well, I say overbuilt, extremely robustly built, they make these thicker, so this section, so you can't actually fit it in. Look, I can't, so it'd be impossible for me to charge with that cable. So there's the width there. That's a massive shame. Now bear in mind that is fixable, because I happen to have a anchor cable here which is built up. It's not super thin, it does have a built up section, but look, that does go in, see that? Whereas the other one doesn't. So please bear in mind, if you are going to use power delivery, make sure you're using cables that are quite sort of slimline. Again, another problem with Type C, I see this regularly. Please make the opening big enough for the, please. Okay, so we'll get this plugged in, and there you go. Type C to Type C, and you should see the red flash there. There's the red flash, 1.4 amps there at about 5 volts, so it does charge, so perfect. There's no power bank feature on this for taking it the other way, but I don't care. That just gives you problems when you're trying to use power delivery. So well done, Sofirn. You've got Type C and it works power delivery, but please can you just make this a little bit bigger? Just, it's a shame that, it's a shame. I'll mark off a little bit of a mark for that, but I will give them a mark for the fact that they've got power delivery working, because a lot of manufacturers can't be bothered. Okay, so that's your charging there. So it is power delivery, which is nice. It's IPX8, as long as you put that in properly and have that screwed down nicely. So it means it's waterproof, you can put that underwater. It comes with a 1 meter drop rating, which isn't massive, but I'd rather have that than nothing. I would have preferred to have seen 1.5 or higher, but this is a budget light, so completely expected. It does have automatic temperature regulation, as they're called. In other words, when you run this on turbo, it's going to get so hot that it will pick up, I think it's 55 degrees Celsius, and it will start to drop the output, so to keep it cool. And it does do that, and this does get quite hot. No hotter than any of the other lights. It's within levels. So in regards to that and the UI, we'll go over that now. So mercifully, the UI is quite simple. It's not on the level of Anduril, where it takes, a 3-hour course and a written exam to work out how to use it. It's quite simple. So we'll go through that now. So you have one click for on and one click for off. Dead simple. You can click and hold to go to its absolute lowest, which is moon. So for click and hold, watch. There, absolute lowest. While we're in this mode, here's something I want to point out. So we'll just get the manual here. That light's quite green. I don't know how that'll show on camera, but the lower levels, there's a bit of green to that, especially to my eyes. There, see that there's green in that. It's not picking up very well on camera, but to be honest, to be fair to Sofirn, it's a symptom of the emitter, not something they've decided to do. So a lot of the SSTs, you'll tend to find they're really nice, but you get this green at the lower levels, and then as they get higher current applied to them, that disappears, and it's not an issue. But I just want to point that out. If you are going to use this in moon mode, which is 1 lumens, nice to see, just nice and low for little tasks, you are going to have that slight green. But to be honest, if you're using a 1 lumen mode, does it really matter? Are you going to be caring about anything like that? Probably not. But I just want to point that out. So you can see there it's quite greenish. So that's your moon, and then if you click and hold, it takes you to the modes. So you've got low, medium, high, and it will rotate through them. So low, medium, high, low, medium, high. So on low, it is 90 lumens, and you get 17 hours on their battery. So click and hold again. There's medium, you'll get 450 lumens, and they quote that as about 4.2 hours. Very nice. I was able to walk on low, depending on conditions outside, and then medium was perfect for hiking. So 4.5 hours-ish, nearly, just under. That's pretty decent. And then high, 900 lumens, 2.4 hours. I used a little bit of that for looking at rivers and all sorts of things, and hiking as well. Now you do have turbo, which they are claiming is 2000 lumens, but again, I'm not sure. It feels like 1400. And then to get that, it's just a double click. Double click there, that's your maximum. But bear in mind, when you do that, the temperature is going to rise, it's going to rise, it's going to rise. After about, depending on your ambient temperature, once it reaches about 55 degrees Celsius, it's going to kick in the temperature regulation, and it will drop that, because it just can't sustain that, which is understandable. And then one click takes you back to the modes, or you can just click it and go off. So pretty simple and straightforward. You have a triple click, which is strobe. Now I'm going to hold my hand over just so I don't annoy people. So 1, 2, 3 there. So that is strobing. There's no strobe options, but it's kind of an alternating one. So you get a I'll show you. You get a rapid, slower one, then a rapid one, slower one, rapid one, which is okay, and it does what you would expect for a strobe, which is to disorientate an attacker, giving you a chance to make another decision if someone's got bad intentions in mind. You also have 4 clicks, which is E-lock, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So just like Anduril, you're locking it. Now in that lock mode, you can access Moon, so when you press the button, you'll get nothing. It will flash and say you can't, but you can press and hold and get your little moon mode. A lovely feature, which I like in Anduril. So you don't have to unlock it, you see. You can always get that moon. And then if you do press it, you're just going to get a few flashes, which is saying basically, get lost, you're locked. If you want to unlock it, 1, 2, 3, 4. Unlocked and back again to memory mode, because it remembers the last mode you were in, which is a nice feature. Okay, so you also have one other little, I'm not going to go through the full, there are other few little things. The one that you may be interested in is E-lock, because you can't undo the tail to physically lock the circuit here. So if you want the E-lock, it is, if you want to change the stepping, you can do that. So bear in mind, when it's on, you click and hold and it's going through them. So that's stepping. So it steps 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If you thought, I don't want that, I want it smooth ramping, you can get that. So turn it on and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, you see that little flash? Now it will smooth ramp. So let's do that. So click and hold and it'll go down, 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 up, sorry. Click and hold, it'll go down, 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 until you get a little momentary flicker. Right, that is your lowest. And then if I click and hold again, so watch this finger at the top, click and hold and it goes up. Takes forever, mine takes about 6 seconds. And eventually there, you see there was a momentary flicker. That tells you that's at its maximum. And by maximum, I mean complete maximum, as in that's not just max ramp, that's all the way up to turbo. So quite interesting. I can feel the heat rising there, so I can tell that's in turbo. So if you want that feature, you've got it. If you want to take it back to normal, 1, 2, 3, 4, there, little flash, and it's back to steps again. You see that? Steps are handy. I mean, I quite like a smooth ramp, but steps are handy, so you can memorize the output and run times, and you know how long you've got. Okay, so quite interesting. I was really happy with this. I've done a lot of testing, and I think the UI is pretty sort of straightforward. And what I did was I went out and did some testing. So we'll put this down here for a second. So let's bring up a picture here. Okay, there you go. So what I did was I went out and I stood in the same position for all of these shots. I did the exposure for exactly the same amount of time. I held the light in exactly the same position, at the same height, in the same hand, and I aimed at exactly the same target. So here's what I came up with. So at first I tested the Brightnight E18, which is fine. It's a nice slimlined 18650. You're getting about 1100 sort of lumens on that. No problems with the light, other than it's quite punchy for a TIR. For a TIR, you would expect it to be quite floody. It's not got that much flood. I mean, if you look in the middle of that picture there, to the right, you can see the beam coming in, that blue sort of haze coming in. That is the actual punch in the middle. So it's pretty good, and it throws quite a bit. So nice and bright in that central section, but then periphery, not so good. So I probably wouldn't go hiking with that light. The next one to the right there is the Lumentop FW3A. Absolutely fine light, better than the FWAA, which had a few button issues. Mine hasn't, the 3A. I think that's pretty nice. It's TIR, it's a triple emitter, it's slightly almost frosted, so you get a nice diffuse beam there. You get a nice wide section of usable light in the middle, and you still get periphery where you can see the trees on the far left and the far right, and even down right at the bottom there, you are getting the path and a few of those leaves there. So excellent for hiking, no problems. I think that's a nice TIR there. So top right is the next torch, the E51C, so about 1600 lumens. I should have mentioned that FW3A is 2800 on turbo. So the next torch that we're looking at, about 1600-ish lumens maximum. Very nice light, underrated because it has the type C hidden away behind the threaded section. So as you can see, Morphrui is using a totally different setup though. The setup they've chosen is to use a orange peel reflector, so you're getting a bit of throw and a little bit of spread, and that is exactly what you're seeing there. I would argue that the periphery isn't quite as good as a Lumentop, but they are a different tint, different setup, and you see that sort of the hot spot in the middle there. It's great, but I think it's almost twice as wide on the Lumentop and a lot more sort of spread out. I think that's better. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the next torch, just in the aspect of outdoors, you're probably better off with the lumen top. But then if you want more distance, then you could argue, well, no, actually I want the next torch. So you get more through on the next torch, but less overall top lumens, even though they're using exactly the same cell. Okay, the next one, the Woburn C3, older now, and they have fixed that fugly beam and the overcharging sort of issue. It's okay, it's absolutely fine. I think it's an Osram P9 and it's quite a high lumen count there. It should be up there, sort of 1200-ish, I'm pretty sure. Decent, no problems. Again, you can actually see the beam, similarly to the E18. You can see that hazy blue beam coming in from the right there in the middle. So it's quite throwy for a small light, quite throwy, but the peripheral has slight fall off. But I don't think it's bad, it's just less than the lumen top. And in fact, it actually looks less than the next torch, which is weird. But the next torch has slightly more lumens, so just to be fair there. So the next one is the Woburn D1. Now, I would argue that Woburn D1 there is almost just as floody as, in fact, better than the lumen top. Even though the lumen top is a tiny bit lighter in the middle, maybe, but it's a different tint, so it won't look as light. The Woburn actually looks slightly better. It's slightly harsher, not as good a tint, but I think that Woburn, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, the Woburn is an excellent wide TIR setup, so you get a floody, wide, lovely transitioned beam, and that's exactly what you're seeing there. What you probably can't see in that image is you have this tiny little punch in the middle. It is there, but it's hard to see, and that just gives you a little bit of extra utility. So all in all, though, pretty decent, and that's only about 1100 lumens. Then you have the Workhorse FC11, quite a nice tint. In fact, you could probably argue the tint is warmer than the lumen top, which I think it is off the top of my head. I think that's a high CRI from Samsung as the emitter. Okay, but I never felt like the FC11 was giving me the output that they were claiming, but decent. I think you can agree that has a bit of everything. It's got a usable hotspot there, nice transition, and periphery is good. You know, looking at that and comparing it to the D1, it's similar transition, periphery, but slightly better tint. So next, bottom left, is the Sofirn SC32 Pro, which should be around 2000 lumens, so similar claims to the one that we're looking at here, the SC32. So interestingly, on that one, you have a hotspot in the middle there, but then the actual fill to that on the left and right is pretty good. I could walk by that, no problem. I remember on that one, maybe on the lower levels, I had a little bit of green, but I think that is an underrated light. The SC32 Pro, absolutely fine. Massive output for an 18650. So not a lot more to say other than I like that, and you've got this little punch in the middle there. Okay, so the light we're actually supposed to be looking at here, the SC32. Now straight away, let's have a look at this. Look at the SC32 and then look to the left on the older Pro there. Now the claim is that they're both 2000, but the SC32 here should have a beautiful transition where it doesn't seem to have that. It seems to have like a long, quite a wide hotspot in the middle, but then the sides aren't that good. I mean, strangely, the SC32 Pro seems to have slightly better peripheral, which it shouldn't, because it's not really made for that. If you remember, the Pro has a smooth reflector, so you'd expect that to be all through and nothing else, but the SC32 seems to be slightly lacking there, so that Fresnel lens is focusing the light. So depending on the range, I mean, up close it's better than the Sofirn SC31, but at that distance shown there, the older one seems better. But having said that, I'm sure they'll bring out an SC32 Pro which will beat the 31 Pro. So you know, we're not necessarily comparing apples to oranges here. I get that. But I just wanted to point out that for a supposed sort of smooth lens, that's not necessarily what you're getting. And again, I think what lets the SC32 down is I don't think you're getting 2000 lumens out of that. It doesn't feel like that. But in actual use, I had a lot of fun walking around with it, and I didn't go, this is rubbish. I enjoyed using it. And it's not until you do these side-by-sides that you think, well, there's something else going on here. Lastly, and I guess, you know, the last one is the Workhorse TS21. Now bear in mind, much bigger, much heavier, and it's using a 21700, not an 18650, so much more juice, much more power, and it is a triple emitter. So also the output is completely different. It's 3,500 lumens and a slightly different tint, a little bit warmer there. So yes, it looks, you know, I would say better on the periphery, but very similar on the middle. I would say the Sofirn 32 actually has a slightly brighter middle, but then the TS21 is brighter to the sides, but it should be because it's more lumens, isn't it? So let's sum up. So Briner E18, very punchy in the middle, but poor periphery. Lumentop FW3A, great all-rounder. Next torch, tiny little bit throughy in the middle, but with relatively good side, but there's drop off there on the bottom left and bottom right, which I would expect with the way that's set up. Woburn C3 has drop off even though it shouldn't, but it does have that light punch in the middle, which is brighter than a lot of the others. Woburn D1, perfect for hiking, very, very wide beam, almost 180 degrees. The Workhorse FC11 looks slightly underpowered there, but I think that's the tint. But again, nice beam, not as good as the other ones though, in some regards, but in an actual usable beam and width there, it's nice. Sofirn SC31 Pro, very nice. You've got periphery and you've got punch in the middle. SC32 seems to have drop off on the left and right, so that's a little bit concerning, but we'll discuss that later on. The Workhorse TS21, I guess it's not fair because it's using a bigger battery and it is triple emitter and it is 3,500 lumens, but it's doing okay. But just shows you the Sofirn SC32 is doing really good where it can go next to that and only have the drop off issue. Okay, so we'll get rid of that photograph now. Right, that gets rid of that. Okay, so let's go over the good points and the bad points. So, pros for this, right? It works whilst it's charging, which is a feature I love, especially when you're out camping. It has, you know, reverse protection for cells. The clip's good. I like it, and I used it. I wish it was a bit higher and longer, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I'll put that as a good point because some of them that come with, I mean, look at that. What's that? That's like an afterthought. Rubbish. Whereas that is better. It's small for an 18650, as I've pointed out. Look, if you compare to all the ones that I was looking at, look, size-wise, look, the only one that beats it is the lumen top. Look at that. It's even smaller than the D1, and the D1, look, I mean, I've showed you before, but look, so it's almost the smallest in this lineup apart from the FW3, so exceptional size, and I think that's thanks to the Fresnel and making an effort. It's Type C, it's also power delivery, but just bear in mind that caveat, you need to make sure there's clearance there, so a little bit of an issue there. It's very low price, it's like 25 bucks, I think that's exceptional for what you're getting, even with a cell. The battery LED on the side, which I didn't show you actually, so when you first fire this up, this will give you an indication. So green means you've got plenty air, and it will go red when you're running low. So that's a multifunction because it also flashes red when it's charging and then goes green. So it's just a little extra added feature, and it's nice to see. They didn't have to add that, but they did, and I think that gives feedback to the user, and I think that's important. You know, I think that's nice. I think the UI is simple enough, and it has E-lock. I think E-lock's very important because you can't undo the tail. So you've got that. You can have ramped or smooth ramping, stepped or smooth ramping, sorry. So you've got that option there. Brilliant. You've got an option of tints. You can have 5,000 or the 6,500. Flat top works. You don't even have to get their cell. So there's a hell of a lot to like about this light. Now, what don't I like? Okay, let's get straight to the point here. The Type C slot is not wide enough. They just need to rethink that. That's an easy fix. On super low, it looks green. So if we go to super low, there's green there. I mean, it looks a bit yellowy there, but there is green, unfortunately. But most people aren't going to notice that. Like a mainstream user isn't going to go, it's a little bit green. Oh my God, the end of the world. But flashaholics won't want to see that. And the output issue, that doesn't feel like, if we turn it on, that doesn't feel like 2,000 lumens. It feels like about 1,500, 1,400, certainly slightly less or on par with the next torch, which is about 1,600. I just don't think it's getting up to that level, but I don't have any equipment to test and prove that. That's just my opinion, okay? But bear that in mind. So there's a lot to like. And in regards to the specs on that beam, in fact, we'll bring up a picture here. So I did some testing and I thought, right, let's have a look. So this is what I came up with. So the tint, now the claim is that this is 5,000 Kelvin. The tint that I came up with, my testing was 5,253. So near enough, slightly higher, but it's not the end of the world, and it doesn't look mega white or harsh or anything like that. The only problem I did come across was the CRI rating. So that stands for Color Rendering Index. In other words, natural daylight is 100%. You get the full color gamut. There's no missing colors from that. The unfortunate thing is, as you go down to about 70, that's okay, you can deal with that, but in comparison it's not as nice. And then this was way below that, so it was about 63. It sometimes hovered up to 65 depending on the mode, but 63 to 65% isn't that good. So it was, that spoils it a little bit. I will knock a little mark off for that. I'm seeing a lot of lights recently where they're great CRI, then I'm seeing so much are below 70, and I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't know whether they're chasing, I don't know what's going on there, but that's just what I came up with. I did test it over multiple days, so that's why I've got a couple of readings, but the lowest was about 63, and then this, I think my last reading here was 63.1. In regards to flicker, in other words pulse width modulation, on its very, very lowest I was able to get a tiny little bit, but it's completely imperceptible. No risk whatsoever. I couldn't even capture it on 1,000 frames per second cameras. Totally unacceptable there. I was not able to capture that. So there is, for all intent purposes, to the human eye, there is no pulse width modulation. So brilliant, well done. If you have a look at the graph at the bottom there, I also did that in, I think that was medium mode and high mode. And again, flicker index extremely low, very fast frequency, the modulation depth not particularly massive. So no problems there whatsoever. So kind of disappointing. So Kelvin values about where it should be. The color rendering index is lower than I would have liked, so I'll mark off for that. And the pulse width modulation, perfect. So no issues to my eyes. Okay, so get rid of that photograph there. Okay, so really we need to sum up here, and these are the other lights we looked at. You know, there's the TS21, much bigger. I mean, look, size-wise, much bigger and wider. It's using a completely different cell though. It's A21700, so much bigger. But 3,500 lumens. I'll just quickly go through these. You have the Bryna A18, just over 1,000-ish lumens. You've got that punchy, even though it's TIR, it's quite punchy. You've got a hot spot that throws and then not a lot else, but just a little option there, but quite expensive. FW3A by Lumen Top uses, again, same cell but smaller. Look, smaller, but you are missing out because you don't get USB charging. So there you go. So there's a small problem to think about. SC31 Pro, which side by side, I think that did an excellent job. Really, really good. You have Angular. It's not a tail clicker, but you can tail stand it, and it has charging. And look, Type-C, and look, because they made it wide enough, all the connectors fit. So you need to consider this. I would say, if you're looking at this light and you go, well, I'm not that sure, have a look at these. These are even cheaper now. So you may want to look at this, the SC, I think it's the SC31 Pro, yeah, so pretty nice. But again, it's a smooth reflector, but you wouldn't think it looking at those beam shots. Again, 18650, and then you have the Workos FC11. So very nice light, sister company by Sofirn there, using an orange pure reflector, so you get a totally different output though. But quite nice, you know, I had no problems with this one. The clip's okay, it's not the best, And then there's the next torch. One of the features I liked about this one was you can charge it with Type-C, but look, it's behind this section, so you can completely waterproof the flap there. Brilliant. And then it has a little LED there to tell you what's happening here, but pretty nice light, you know, very nice, and it's a lot more throwy, but that's by virtue of the fact of it's using an orange pure reflector. I also tested against the C3 budget light, no problems with this. Budget light, fun to use tail clicker by Woburn, and Woburn are a decent company. I've done a lot of reviews of their stuff and they always make me smile. They do some good stuff. And then talking to Woburn, look at the width of this one. Look, in fact, we'll put this down, watch. Let's just compare them. So we'll put that up quite high. Now look at the termination line there, which is this here, where the beam is. It's not 180, it can't be, because it's down by a gap there, but look how wide that beam is. That is incredible by Woburn. Now to be fair, this one's not bad either, because it's not that far down. So if we turn this on, and then turn it up a bit. See? I mean, you can see the crenellated effect there, but if we turn this up a bit, there. It's not bad, it's not far off, look. It's still pretty good. It's not as good, but it's within tolerable levels, look. It's a slightly steeper angle, but pretty decent. So, you know, to sum up, let's turn this off. These are just some other options you might want to think about. Let's turn that off. There you go. So move them out of the way. I really need to give this a mark out of 10. So much to like. It works whilst charging. Reversible deep carry clip. It's not technically deep carry, but it could be if they just made a slight change. It's very small for an 18650. It's Type C. It's power delivery compatible as long as you can get one that fits. Flat tops work. It has E-lockout. You can smooth ramp it or step ramp it. Very low price, even with the cell. It's got the LED, which tells you what the hell's going on, and a quite simple UI and a nice button that just works. It's like an E-lock. So in cons, not many. I don't think you're getting the full 2000, so just something to think about. And you know, it feels like about 1500, 1400. The super lows have a tiny bit of green to them, but most people probably don't care about that. How often do you use one lumen? Probably not that often. And the CRI was lower than I would have liked. Just bump that up 10% and it probably wouldn't be an issue. You know, 70% issues is fine, but once you start dipping down, it becomes a little bit more noticeable. It's less pleasant to use, put it like that. So to give this a mark out of 10, I'm going to give it an 8. To qualify that, that's because there's a hell of a lot to like about it. And the things I don't like are something that happens when it's on one lumen, and I can't prove that it's not the 2000. So for the money, exceptional value. For 25 bucks with a cell, free delivery, I think, you know, excellent in that regards. And I did mention this at the start of the review. This was sent to me by Sofirn, but this is an honest review. If you did want this, you can get 30% off by getting it through Amazon. It's not my link. This is Sofirn's link. You use their code in the description here. I'm trying to save you some money. I don't work for Sofirn. I don't get any backhanders because of that link. I'm trying to save you money. So if you use that, you'll get 30% off and you'll get it quite rapidly, or you can get it from their site. So consider that. I'll give this a healthy 8 out of 10. There's a few things I would change, but it's a beautiful small light that you can carry, and it has almost every feature you could need. Really good. They just need to change the design on this. Maybe make a V2 and make that like oval or something like that, or elliptical. But other than that, they've done an exceptional job. You know, there's just a few things holding back from getting a higher mark. So well done, Sofirn. 8 out of 10. I've done loads and loads of comparisons and side by sides. So if you want to watch them, stay with me and we'll do them now. So goodbye.